Okay, so we've seen so far about different data structures we can use, including stacks. We've done stacks, queues, linked lists. So what I like to do is instead of maybe just seeing these things in the abstract, is work with a specific use case where a particular data structure might be useful. So what we're going to end up building here is an application that basically allows you to undo a file write. So let's say you're typing up a paper or whatever, um, and you type up a line and you want to go back and then undo it. You can do that. So the application will save a history of all the edits that you've made and will allow you to undo them. And then it'll rewrite the file minus minus your uh, undo. Okay. And in order to do that, we can use a stack. And in fact, we're going to use two stacks. And that might seem a little strange, but we'll see why that is in a second. So here we've got kind of a model of our application right now. We've got our history stack. These could have different names, but this will be like our primary stack. So this is like every edit you make will get saved in the history stack. And then the corrected stack, this is basically like a temporary stack that we'll use. So if we make a mistake or we want to undo something, we'll remove it from the history stack and then put all of the rest of the stuff in the corrected stack. Anyway, so we'll see how that works out. So it might seem a little weird at first, but we'll see how that works. So before we get started, of course, a quick reminder: a stack is a data structure where there's only one access point, so I can put things in it, and I can take things out from the same spot. So if I put two things in, right? So first thing, second thing, I have to take out the second thing first, and then the first thing. So the things you put in, they come out in reverse order. All right, so let's see an example of that. So this will be kind of model the application that we want to build. So here we've got our history stack. We've got our first edit, let's just say. So that goes into our history stack. We'll make a copy of that, and then this is going to go down on our page, right? So this is what's going to get saved to the file. So the file is really what we care about from a user perspective, but in order to get that, we're going to have to do some hidden work in here. So our first line gets here, and then our second line comes down. So we add a second line, and then this gets written down on the page here, the second line. And we write a third line, and this gets placed on the stack here. And this gets written on the page like this. Okay, so far so good. You can notice that on the page, the first thing is first and then second, but here, since we're on a stack, we are kind of reversing things. So let's get to, looks like we've got a mistake here. So let's go ahead and we save that to the file. And then we realize, uh-oh, that's not going to work. We need to get rid of that. So how do we do that? Well, let's take we can pop it off of our stack, right? So we've been pushing things on, push, 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 push. Now we're not happy with this, so we pop it off. So we'll pop it off and we'll just put it in the trash here. That goes away. The issue is if we want to rewrite this file, how do we do that? Because if we just start popping things off our history stack and put them back on the page, we're going to end up with things in the reverse order, right? So it'll be third, second, first, and that's not what we want. We don't want third, second, first. So that's why we're going to have to use this intermediate stack. So we've popped off our garbage we don't want, and we're going to have to put this in our temporary stack, which is called the corrected stack. So we put it in here, and then put it in here, and then put it in here, and you can see we've now basically reversed the order, right? So it's the same data type. We're using a stack, so the same principle applies where the first thing you put in is the last thing you could take out. But since we reversed it here, we can reverse it again. And then what we're going to do in order to get our page and our history back in sync is we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to pop it off our corrected stack, or the temp stack. And when we do that, we can write a line to the file. We'll do the same thing again. Pop the second one off, put it on here, write to the file. And the third one, we'll do the same thing. Pop it off and add that to the file. And now our page is what we want it. Our dud is nowhere to be seen, and our history stack is back where we started before we had the dud. So we can continue on as normal. We can add the fourth one, and so on. So we can keep doing this, and then if we make a mistake, we can remove it. So this is the basic application we want to make. We're using two stacks. The stacks, one kind of consequence of the stack is that when you put things on, they go in one order, and when you take things off, it's the reverse order. So we can use that to our advantage here. So let's take a look at our application now. So we're going to start with, we already saw this in the previous video where we coded a stack class. So we're going to use that. We're going to reuse that here, so I'm not going to rewrite that. So we have our stack here, and that's available for us to use. And we're going to make another class, which we're going to call Undoable, which may or may not be a good name, but that's what we're going to call it. And we're going to need to think about how we want to design this class. So I would say we're going to want to have some kind of init. We're probably going to want to have something that writes a file and something that undoes a write. So we can go ahead and we'll just stub those out for now. So write file. Just stub that out, and we'll do undo write. All right, so we have two methods now. What about our data? So again, lots of different ways you could do this, but let's start with a, I think, file name. If we initialize an instance of Undoable, we can pass it a file name. Let's do that. File name, and we'll do okay, so now we have our file name, and we also saw in the example that we need two stacks. So we need a history stack and a corrected stack. So we can add those. So self.history stack is, we'll create an instance of stack. And then we have a corrected stack, which is basically our temporary stack. Okay, so now we have our class. We have our basic data, our basic data structure that we're going to use, which is going to be a double stack or two stacks. And we have a file name we can pass in, so that's the name of the file that's going to be generated as we're editing. And we have write files. Let's go ahead and try writing this method. So when we write a file, we'll get some input. And then, as we saw, we'll push it onto the history stack. So okay, so we write something, we push it onto the history stack, and then we kind of, at the same time, we can write it to the file. So let's write that. So we'll take a line, so we'll add that as a parameter. And we'll do self.history stack, and the method we use on a stack to add something is push, of course. So stack.push, and we'll push the line onto that. Okay, next thing we need to do is we're going to append, writing one line at a time. We'll go ahead and use append. So we'll append to a file. And so we can do that with using the with statement to create a self-contained context. So we got the file name, and we'll say that it's append. Okay, so we have our file object, and then we'll write to our file object, or write using our file object. And we'll write a line, and we'll add a new line here just for formatting's sake. Okay, so now we have our class, we have our two stacks, and we can write a file. So we can add something to the stack, and then when we do that, we also basically write a copy of that to the page. Okay, so let's go ahead and test that out and see if it works so far. So undoable is, and we'll call it write our masterpiece and save that. Okay, looks like no errors. So let's go ahead and try writing a line, or write to the file. So ud.write file, and we'll write a line. We'll do, let's see, what should we do? We'll do, why bother? Okay, all right, so we've started our masterpiece now, one line at a time, so why bother? Okay, so we've got our method. This looks like it works, and let's go ahead and check, we'll check our history stack. So ud that, we can use peek to see what's on top. Ud dot history stack dot peek. We'll print that out. And we can see that why bother. Okay, so that's great. So far, so good. We can now write file, but the whole point of this is we want to be able to undo our mistakes. So if we make a mistake, we write a line we don't like, we should be able to undo it. So if we go back to our diagram here, we have, where's our dud? So we write a dud here, make a copy of that. We also write our dud to the file. Okay, so now we have a state of affairs that we're not happy with, so we want to get rid of dud. So what we do is we will pop dud off of the history stack, which will be garbage collected. We don't have to explicitly put it in the trash, but that will be gone. And then we'll put first into the corrected stack. We'll have to rewrite the file. And then we'll put first back on to the history stack, make a copy of that, and that will return us to our original state. So that's a little bit complicated, but let's try if we can code that out. So first thing we need to do is remove the most recent item from the history stack. So self.historystack.pop. Okay, so now we take something off of the history stack. Then what we have to do is take, so we've taken dud off of, we'll add a couple more here just for, so we've taken dud off, but now we need to go through the history stack, and we can't iterate over because of the way we've made our stack function. There's no iterator, no iter dunder that we've overridden, and we're not inheriting from list or anything like that. So we're gonna have to figure out another way to go through everything in our stack. So what we can do is use a while loop, and we can use this isEmpty property. So we can basically check while the stack is not empty, then we'll pop it off. And as we're popping it off the history stack, we'll be pushing them on the corrected stack. So kind of do those at the same time. So while not self dot, so we'll check if it's empty, and if it's not empty, we'll pop it off. So self dot history stack dot pop, just like we did it first. So this is the bad one. So we're just going to throw this in the trash. We don't care about that one. But these ones we need to save. So these are the good ones. So we can't just pop it. We have to pop them off and simultaneously push them onto the corrected stack, or our temporary stack. So self dot corrected stack dot push. So because pop returns a value, so pop returns this value, we can use it to push on to here. So at this point, we should have we should have a stack that our corrected stack should have only the good value. So what we've done here is this: take that off, go third, third, second, first. This is harder than it looks. All right. So so that's where we are now. We've taken our junk off that we want to undo, and we've got our temp stack, or our corrected stack, ready to go. Okay, so the next phase we need to handle is we need to take what's in this corrected stack and write that one line at a time to the file, and also put it back onto the history stack. Okay, so let's try doing that. So we'll have to we'll be doing a file operation, so we can open a file, and we'll open the same file that we wrote to, so self.filename. But we're going to use write instead of append, because we're going to need to start from scratch. So we're basically going to be rewriting the file with all of our currently valid history items. So we're going to be writing this file, and then we're going to loop through the corrected stack. Well, not loop through, but essentially we'll do the same thing. We'll have the while loop, and we'll check while it's not empty. We'll remove everything from the corrected stack, and then write it to the file and put it on the history stack. So while not self dot corrected stack that is empty, same thing we did above. So while that's not empty, we will pop off the element from the corrected stack. So we'll save that to a variable because we need to do two things with it. So line is self.corrected stack.pop. Okay, so now we have that line. In this case, it would be this right here, this first element. So we've popped it off, right? It's kind of frozen in midair right now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to push it onto history, and we're also going to write lines. So let's do self.history stack. So this is where it came from originally. It's now back where it belongs. Push line. So we're pushing it onto the history stack. So it's getting pushed here. And we're also going to, we can think of making a copy and then push it, rewrite the line to the file here. So we'll do file object dot write lines, and we'll do line plus n. Okay, let's try running that. Okay, so we're not really using the methods, but there's no error, so that's good. Now let's try, we'll write another line here. We'll try, let's see. To exist or not. I'm not sure if that's exactly a question, so we'll leave off the question mark. And let's try running it. Okay, we'll try this again. Let me just start from the very beginning of the file. There we go. So why bother to exist or not? So we write 2 lines to the file, so that's good. Now we want to, here's the trick, right? We want to see if we can undo one of these operations. So let's do ud dot undo right. Now we just get why bother. So this to exist or not, it gets written, right? It gets written, but then it gets undone. So it goes through that whole process that we described, where we write it to the stack, then we write it to the page, and we undo it. We pop it off, put it in the trash, move it over to the corrected stack, and then move it back to the history stack and write it to the page at the same time. So we can maintain the state of our, the desired state of our application. Okay, so why bother is there. But let's say, we really aren't happy with that either. So we want to undo that as well. We can do better. Undo right. And we'll do, let's see, this one, yeah. Let's see, ud.write file, and we'll do to be or not to be. That sounds good. We'll see if that works. Okay, so now I just have my most recent version. Okay, and we can keep going with this just to make sure that it works under a couple other conditions. We'll do ud.write file. What a question. All right, so we'll run this, and I think we'll have a new version of masterpiece.txt. To be or not to be? What a question. Not quite satisfying. Let's see, we'll undo that one. And I think I can think of a better line. So we'll write a line, and we'll do something like that. And now we have our final version. So to be or not to be, that is the question. So this is just one application, one possible application for a stack. In this case, we're using 2 stacks. It's a little convoluted maybe, but it works. So there you go. It's one usage of a particular kind of data structure.